Welcome to the Wildspire Conversations podcast. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate coaching sessions with inspiring entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto Padovani, wild creation coach and soul storyteller at The Awakened Business, where I help coaches, therapists, and creative entrepreneurs craft an irresistible message and broadcast it to the world. In each conversation, I'll ask curious, playful questions, challenging us to connect with the deeper purpose and joy of what we're here to do. We may experience one or more of the following: articulation of their soul's message and mission, life-changing stories, insights, ahas, and wisdom nuggets, ideas for new products, services, or businesses. Truth is, I have no idea exactly what will emerge, because there's no agenda for this conversation. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. It's time to get wild-spired. My guest today is Bianca Skilbeck, a clinical hypnotherapist and provider through Australia's National Peak Eating Disorder organization, the Butterfly Foundation. Bianca is very interested in intuitive eating and the health at every size paradigm, and how these frameworks can help guide eating disorder recovery. Her practice, Freedom from Food, specializes in therapy for those with disordered eating, chronic dieting, body image dissatisfaction, and gut health issues. Bianca uses a variety of psychotherapeutic techniques, including but not limited to cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, hypnosis, resource therapy, and Gestalt therapy. She has a special interest in working with and understanding the mind-body connection and how the individual can work to integrate all parts of themselves to create more peace and acceptance in their lives. In this conversation, Bianca opens with a question for us to explore. What is good therapy? What follows is a rather hypnotic conversation in itself that's seeded with paradox and asks unanswerable questions throughout. It was truly inspiring to me. We explore the journey of healing and what enables powerful transformation. I invite you to join me for this philosophical and psychological discussion with Bianca Skilbeck. So welcome, Bianca. It's so great to talk to you again. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
What are we talking about today? Where do we begin?
It's a really good question. You reached out, I reached out as well. I guess it was a bit of both. And we've talked before, of course, and it was a really fun and interesting conversation. So I was open to doing that again. And I know that you have a curious spirit, and I know that I have a curious spirit, and lots of thoughts that don't necessarily get channeled into anything in particular all the time. So, yeah, curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, that's what's come to me now as you just said that. What are you working with? What are you chewing on? What are you thinking about these days that's like maybe it's forming, or you'd like to take it to another level, you'd like to see something new with? What would that be?
I have new ideas almost daily. So I don't know if you want me to talk about something that's on my mind consistently, or even just new ideas that came to me yesterday.
Well, what comes to you? Let's stay with this moment. So in this moment, what would be the most fun thing to explore? Like something that, like, I want to talk with Stephanie about this now.
Okay. Something that's, there was a big question that came to me yesterday. And so I guess I'm going to land with one of the ideas I had yesterday. But it's all intertwined, of course. I was thinking about what is good therapy, because I'm a therapist, of course. I'm a hypnotherapist and counsellor, and I'm nearing the end of my psychology undergrad. So I've, so far invested the last 7 or 8 years of my life in this, and I've got plenty more to invest also. It's absolutely my world. And there's a lot of debate, within the therapy world, I think, about what works for people. And I was reading some really interesting conversations on Facebook, about evidence-based treatments versus things that don't have so much evidence-based because they don't have the funding behind them, perhaps, or perhaps because they don't work. And yeah, it just really got me ticking on, what is good therapy, because it's one of those things that we can be so much more sure in other fields. If you look at the really hard sciences, like, the physics and the maths, we know what good maths is. It works or it doesn't. Even biological medicine, of course, there's lots of room for error, but we have much more certainty about what works for people and what doesn't. And therapy is one of those fields there's a lot of people out there saying, I have the answer, I have the cure, I have the this or the that. And there's a lot of ego in that space too, which I think is really troubling for a lot of us. And then there's all of the evidence-based stuff, but that doesn't work for everybody either. So yeah, that's something that I've been really mulling over for the last 24 hours in particular, but more generally, of course, that's my world anyway, sort of trying to figure out those answers.
So what is it that intrigues you about this question so much?
I like truth.
Mm.
And I think on some level there is a need for me to accept that there is no truth, hard truth, that is. We all have our truths and they can change from day to day. I would love to land on something that was true.
Mm. Wow. So landing on something that's true. That's a really beautiful thing that you just said, Bianca, that there is no hard truth. It's almost like the fact that you're drawn to therapy you obviously have a very powerful analytical mind and a grasp of the science behind things, and yet you're drawn to this murky science/art of therapy. It's almost like you're compelled to delve into these waters and look for something, the truth, some truth, like land on something in a land where there maybe isn't any, or it seems like there might not be.
I think I only really ask questions that don't have answers, which when I get the answers, I just move on. So this is the questions I have never been able to really answer. What is the truth? What really works for people? What actually helps? What's true for everybody? Are there truths that could be true for everybody? I'm not sure. I don't know about that. I'm becoming skeptical that there is even one thing that could be true for everybody.
Well, let's look at that. That's pretty exciting and challenging and interesting, certainly. So when you think about what comes up for you when we ponder this question, what is good therapy? What do you think it is?
I'm at a point where I think that good therapy is good listening. I think that good therapy has to be about centering that person with the experience, the person with the lived experience. And I think that there's a lot of lip service paid to that idea, but there's still a very top-down approach. There's still a very, authoritative kind of, yes, but I know your answer, so sit back and let me tell you, kind of approach to therapy, which negates that ability to really listen. And yet at the same time, I think it's important that we sit with both. We come as therapists, as experts in our fields, having learned all of the theories and the techniques and everything, and it's almost like we need to know all of the rules, so as we can then know how to break them. Something like that. I mean, you want to you want to come to therapy with expertise and knowledge of the issues, but still be able to let that go enough that you can listen to the person in front of you
Mm-hmm.
without preconceived notions. So I think so far that's where I've gotten to in my mind, that's what good therapy is, the really listening, not just the lip service, sure, tell me your story, but I'm going to tell you what to do version of that.
So what is good listening? How do we really listen?
I think it's a felt sense, because even words are limited. Words, we could be speaking the same language right now. You and I are speaking English, and we still may attribute such different meanings to different kinds of words. So easily we mess up, and we see this all of the time in our lives, and especially online, and social media and whatever. People say words and they're talking past each other all the time. So I think the real listening is in the feeling. It's an embodied experience. It's walking with another person, like in their shoes for the time that you're with them. I think we have to stop to clarify our language a lot of the time and really draw out what it means when people say the things that they say.
Mm. So listening is good listening, like deep listening is more like feeling, is more like being with them. Is there sort of like a slowing down? Like, how do we do that? Like in good therapy, when we're really listening, when we're being with someone and embodying the experience with them, what does that look like? How do we do it? Like if you're going to break it down into the how a little.
I think that there's no agenda, which is really hard. I think that's the hardest bit. I think coming to the conversation with no agenda, so no desire of I've got to fix this, I'm going to have their answer, I'm going to be brilliant, none of that stuff. Sort of leaving the ego at the door in a way. So in terms of a process, it's sitting down beforehand and checking yourself and saying, do I have an agenda here? Where's my ego in all of this? Am I ready and willing to just be with this person and to just listen? And when you can say yes to yourself after that, okay, I can be here with no agenda, then you're ready to start that process. But then it's a continual checking as well, because our egos are so tricky. They just keep coming back up. So it's a continual, like, real presence and awareness and mindfulness, to, I guess, use a buzzword that people maybe more resonate with or relate to or whatever, but like just a real mindfulness of being present in the moment. Not jumping ahead, so the old, if you're thinking about what you're about to say when somebody's speaking to you, you're not really listening.
What is that like for you when you've checked your ego and you're really listening? What's the experience like for you?
That's actually, it's easeful. It's that's actually when everything gets easier.
What's easier about it? Like, can you contrast it with when it's not easy? Like when you're present and you're listening, really listening, and it's easy, and then when you're not, maybe that'll help us kind of discern, like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I think the example for that, the way to contrast it is if you've ever been in an argument with somebody. It's not easy, and we've all tripped ourselves up there. So I certainly have, in an argument with a partner or whoever, and you are very busy anticipating the next thing you're going to say and everything that you've got to say to tell them that they're wrong, and the conversation is so hard and it just escalates. And there's no presence in that moment. There's, you know, in therapy speak, there's a lot of triggering, you know, I guess of you know, old parts and wounded selves and all of that sort of thing. But there's no actual presence in that moment, and it's very difficult. You know, it's difficult. It's stressful. It's difficult in the body. It's difficult in the mind. You know, when it's really difficult, it's harder to breathe properly. It's harder to do all of that. And in contrast, the easeful communication, the real presence and the listening, it's just so much easier to believe people when they speak, to believe somebody when they have their truth and when they're saying their truth, even if you think it's wrong or irrational or you've got a better way or hang on, I've got your answer.
So what happens? So good therapy is this presence, this real listening that we probably don't encounter many times in our lives ever. I'm thinking, like, or for brief moments if we do, because so many times we're thinking about what we want to say next and we're not fully present. So good therapy requires that. It requires knowing, like coming in with your expertise, your theories and everything, but then being present so that you can let that go and just draw. I'm imagining now, you didn't tell me this yet, but like, so you can then draw upon what you know to draw upon. Well, tell me more about that. Like, so what does it do with the person when the person is in the presence, your client is in the presence of good therapy, when in the experience of good therapy, this deep listening, what happens that makes it powerful, that makes it good therapy?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that's some of my biggest questions that I don't necessarily have answers to. But you know, I think that if you're really deeply listening to somebody, then you begin to embody their experience. You can feel what they're saying. I think you naturally begin to mirror them, match and mirror, in terms of beginning to use their language, and mirror their pace and mirror their tone, mirror their body language perhaps. And then with all of the expertise that's behind you and all of the things that you know and the theories that you could put to use, I think that gets naturally interjected. It's almost like a bit of a take my hand and I'll lead you the way. But we're only going to go one step at a time. I'm not going to, you know, pull you into directions that you're uncertain about.
So what's the experience, like what's your experience when, because I am not a therapist, nor will I ever claim to be one, but I have conversations that can be very powerful and sometimes have a therapeutic quality to them.
Oh yeah. I think I've got a very broad definition of therapy. I think many things are therapeutic. I have no claim to the title.
Yeah, so I'm kind of relating from my own experience, but I'm really interested in yours. I know that there's this, for me, there's like this dance where I use my curiosity to point to it in a direction we might go, and then I tune into them to notice what happens with that. Like, are they pulling back, or are they ready to go through that door? Are they ready to look in that direction? What if we just look and we don't have to move? You know, like so like there's this dance and working with resistance that's very, very, very gentle, that's very subtle, that I notice that for me feels important in having a trusting conversation with anyone, like to not overstep and yet to be present enough to guide in a direction that's useful. So like what's your experience around that, of like when, so you're taking them by the hand and saying, I'll lead you, but you're not pulling. and you're not forcing.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
I think that it takes a really, like you need a really calm relationship within yourself to be able to do that to begin with, which I think is therapy 101 for, for anybody who does this kind of work. That relationship within yourself has to be the primary one. That has to be the thing that you really tend to, first and foremost, because you can't do this work if you're a person who can't stay present with yourself. How do you stay present with somebody else if you can't stay present with yourself? I don't know if I answered your question at all.
If I can even remember what my question was exactly. Well, I just wanted to know more about the experience for you of, so you need to stay present with yourself in order to be present with them. And as you are how do you know, or what is the experience like for you? I'm curious, what's the experience like for you in what is taking their hand and leading, and what is pulling, and where there's agenda and where there's not, or, and maybe you already spoke to this, but if there's anything else.
I think it's the ease stuff. It's, that it's gentle and respectful, and that it's fueled by presence and curiosity and all of that sort of stuff, when the person willingly goes with you to where you may be taking them, or even when, like for me personally, when I learn something new or get sort of led in a direction that I think that's not what I would have thought, or that's not what I might have imagined, this situation to be.
And what does, in good therapy, what do you do when you encounter resistance?
Name it.
What does that look like?
Looks like tact, but it looks like, I guess it looks like centering myself first, making sure that I'm really present and calm, and do I have the right intentions? Do I have the right kind of agenda here? Do I have, am I in check first? And when there's resistance in front of me, then saying, whatever that is, might be something along the lines of, hey, it seems like when I said blah, that you felt uncomfortable, or maybe you didn't want to answer, or maybe you think it's not relevant for you. I'm really curious about that, like how you experience that, or if it's a really, really, hard resistance, if you're getting somebody in front of you that has just totally closed up, which happens. It's I can see that you're feeling really, really, really closed down right now, and I want you to know that I'm with you in that experience. And when you're ready to start to talk about what's going on for you, I'm all ears. I don't know what it's like to be you.
So in encountering resistance, I'm kind of going to recap some of what we said to try to put it together as so good therapy is this deep listening, this being present first with yourself so that you can be present with the other person and really listen, and then connect, those rapport, all of those things you're talking about. That's just going to naturally happen.
Yeah.
So that you can draw from your expertise and guide them. And then when there's resistance, first, again, like always, there's this continual process of checking in, centering with yourself first. And then, as you said, naming it, say, hey, with a curiosity, like, this is what I noticed. I'm curious, what's your experience? Can you tell me more about that? And if you really don't want to, that's okay, but when you're ready, I'm here. It's like this curiosity combined with this willingness to be with them in that resistance or whatever else they're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So what does that do for the client? Like when they experience that, like what makes that useful?
We all want to be validated, don't we? We all want to be heard and seen and understood and respected, as individuals just unto ourselves. And I think for many people that they've not necessarily had that experience. And I think that a lot of healing can happen in the right kind of therapeutic relationship where there's where there's deep listening and being seen and heard and respected. There's healing just in that. And when that rapport has developed and there's trust there, you can begin to broaden those horizons of what's possible. People don't move if they don't feel safe. Simple. Nobody's acting in ways that are self-sabotaging or hurting themselves or whatever, for whatever reasons people come into therapy. They're not doing that because they enjoy pain. It's protection. And people don't move unless they feel really safe.
So really all of these things, this deep listening, this curiosity, this presence, all of that helps them to feel safe first and foremost. They have to develop the trust where they can feel safe. And then when they feel safe, they can see different possibilities and choose something that's maybe more in their self-interest, that's different that they wouldn't have considered before because they were stuck in trying to protect themselves with this thing that's actually not working for them.
Yeah, I think so. I guess it's about integrating or having the capacity to integrate more truth than what you already have, because at any point in our lives, of course, all of us, it doesn't matter what we're doing, where we're up to, we believe that we're doing the right thing, or that we're at least really trying. So when we become stuck in situations, it's about, okay, well, there must be something else that I can integrate here into my perspective that means that I'm still me and I'm still, true to my values and true to my beliefs, but I'm becoming a more nuanced person.
What I love about what you just said, Bianca, and I don't know if I've not heard a lot of people say this actually in that way, because a lot of times in the self-help world, in the personal development world, even in the therapeutic world, we talk about self-sabotaging behaviors. And what I heard in what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, because part of this is paraphrased and going through my own filters, was that we're really not self-sabotaging. We're not sabotaging. We're truly doing what we believe is the best thing to do. And sometimes it's not working so well for us. Like it's probably something that worked in an old situation, like it's, something happened and we learned a way of doing it. But we honestly think that this behavior or this way of thinking is protecting me. And that's why I do it. So it's not actually self-sabotage, isn't it? It's self-preservation, misunderstood maybe. But the thing is, like, in other words, and I think the reason I draw this out is because when people talk about, let me just use myself as the example. If I were to talk about
man, I'm self-sabotaging. It becomes a judgment, like I'm trying to hurt myself. But the truth is that I'm innocently doing something that's hurting myself because I'm trying to protect myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, I think you've maybe you've said it better than even I could, or you've at least paraphrased it in a way that I would agree with all of that. I don't think there is self-sabotage. I think that's a made-up construct. That's a construct that's given from the outside in, that you're sabotaging, you're doing that thing again. And so then we internalize that idea, oh, I'm self-sabotaging, I'm a person who self-sabotages. That's a made-up construct that perhaps we could do away with that. We could do away with this idea that, I'm a person who sabotages myself. Like, no, I'm a person who's got my best interests at heart. Of course I am. Aren't we all?
That statement brings me such peace. Like, oh, I have my own best interests at heart. I'm really okay. I'm not screwed up. Like it's, oh, you mean really? I'm just doing the best I can? Like, really? Really, truly? Really?
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see that done away with too. And because how many times have I beaten myself up personally thinking that I should know better? Well, I don't. I get what I get. I've integrated what I've integrated. I can imagine that just the other thing that I heard in what you were saying that's so beautiful is like there's this healing that happens when people know they're safe to look for something new. Like just being there, listening and doing these things without even opening your toolbox of all the things that they teach you in school and all these beautiful, amazing tools of transformation that you have, just that, it's already begun.
And we're so afraid to make mistakes, aren't we? We're so afraid that we're going to sabotage, that we're going to go down the wrong path, that we're going to have some outcome, that we never intended on. But how do we learn from that? I don't think that, the biggest growth experiences are usually from the mistakes. So how is it ever wrong to make the mistake? I mean, it's a very broad brush thing to say. Sometimes we make really big mistakes that, think, I could have done that better and I should have done that better. But the really deep learnings come from mistakes.
It doesn't mean that it absolves us from the consequences of it, but it kind of allows us to stop judging ourselves for something that we've done that we can't change. Right? Like if I make a mistake and oh God, that was a mistake. And that was clearly something that I would not repeat again. But if I really can understand that I did it because I did it innocently, there's a quote that, I don't even know if it's, how does it go? It's repeated a lot by Michael Neal, who I follow, and man, I talk about him an awful lot, who's a thought leader, a spiritual teacher, really just leads conversations, he's a coach and an author. And he says often that people are doing the best they can given the thinking that looks real to them at the time. In other words, given the information they have and the thinking that looks real, which thoughts can be really stormy sometimes, right? They're doing the best they can. So the best I can is going to look different depending on what information I have and what kind of thinking looks real to me. And in every case, it's innocently done. But that doesn't mean that if I make a mistake that harms someone, it's not on me to make it right, to take accountability, to apologize, to own up to whatever my actions are. It just means that I don't have to judge myself on top of it, which I think is a mistake that we make. Like, all right, again, I'll speak for myself. I challenge myself to do this often, speak for myself and not an imaginary you or the royal we. Like when I think I grew up, and I'm not sure where I learned this, I grew up thinking that if I don't feel guilty and if I don't beat myself up for things, I will misbehave. Like that is how I keep myself in check or keep myself in line. And
having enough guilt.
Yeah, exactly. Or just beating myself up and judging myself for whatever guilt, shame, whatever emotions that might come with that. And this conversation is so much lighter because I can let that go and be accountable and yet not have to carry that extra burden of guilt and shame. Instead, move forward with okay, what can I see now? Like, that's what makes it safe for me. If I'm like heaping all this guilt and shame on myself, I'm not feeling safe. I can't explore like, oh, what could I have done differently? You know, what else can I see that will keep me from doing that next time?
It's so heavy, the stuff that we put on ourselves to try to get it perfect. I mean, maybe what we're having here is a conversation about perfectionism, amongst other things.
So, good therapy, what makes good therapy? Can you be giving a client an experience of good therapy when they're not receiving it as good therapy? So in other words, when it's not getting results, can it still be good even when it doesn't get results in that moment?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think the answer is yes, because I think we really have to question what a result is as well. I mean, the result is not in the before and after photo. You know, and healing is not linear, as we both know. And we can't possibly be the same person that we were an hour ago. We're just not, you know, an hour has passed. Even physiologically, some cells have died and some have regenerated. You know, we're not the same person. So I think that even in the most stuck situations where it feels like nothing's changing and nothing's getting through and there are no results, you know, I think that's just another judgment again. It's another judgment that we can be mindful of. Like what, you know, what is the right length of time that it's supposed to take to heal? You know, it's another judgment. I expected this to be done in 3 months. Now it's 6 months. Outrageous. But what's the right amount of time?
How do you help? So in good therapy, how do you deal with that? Like helping your client to understand that just because it doesn't look like anything's happening, that doesn't mean nothing's happening.
It's the whole, what is it, the reverse law of attraction or something. The more you try to like grab on to something, the harder it is to hang on to. And it's actually, I think that the biggest healing is to let it go. And sometimes we can become very obsessed by the idea that this needs to be done now, right now, because I can't handle it a moment longer. And the truth is you can handle it a moment longer. And your sheer desire for this thing to be different is actually the thing that is keeping you most in prison.
Wow. Would you say that like that to a client?
Maybe.
I'm sure I can't,
Yeah.
it would depend on the client. If it was me sitting in front of you, as I'm sitting in front of you now, you probably would. You'd be like, the thing, your desire. But I want to say that again because, and I'm taking notes here, and I'm like, you're dropping these beautiful, profound nuggets, and you say them so simply that it sounds like, oh yes, and I'm like, what you just said, Bianca, what that? This, your desire for it to be different is what's keeping you in prison. You know, it's like this, it comes back to something that I've found it to be, there are like two pieces in the way that I work and play with clients that seem to come up. And one is acceptance. It's like we've got to just come to the present moment, and we're almost naturally in a state of acceptance. Like, okay, this is what's here. It's when we're in our thinking about what might happen and what happened yesterday that we're not, no, that shouldn't happen. This isn't right. I can't, no, this isn't. So there's this place of acceptance that we come to, like, okay, here's where we are right now. And it's present and it's settling. And then there's this willingness. And it's like when we are struggling and fighting, like what I heard in that statement you said, is that when I'm trying so hard to get rid of something, whether it's my issue or my trauma or my financial challenges or whatever thing it is, when I'm trying so hard to get rid of it, to make it be something other than it is, it keeps me enmeshed with it. It keeps me imprisoned to it. It keeps me attached to it because I'm wrestling with it. It's when I can just be with it that now it can move, that now I can see some new path that can create change, and not until I'm willing to just let it be there.
I think it's a term that helps even get to this is like we talk about acceptance, and that's a word. That's a word we all kind of know what it means, but because I guess it gets thrown around a lot, it sort of loses its meaning, and so we can add an extra. We can up the ante, and we can say what we're looking for here is radical acceptance, which is not a term that I've coined. That's something I've heard elsewhere, but that notion of radical acceptance, like acceptance at all costs, acceptance at whatever it takes. Like I really, really do not have to do anything here. I don't have to change anything. There's nothing wrong right now. This does not have to be different, and I can live with it if it's not different. It's okay. And that's when we can just take that nice big, like, just breath out. Just go, okay. Radically accepting this moment.
Yeah. So this kind of segues a little bit into the work that you've chosen to do in this moment around anti-diet, like helping people with, have food freedom, right? Even just the name of your business is different. It's not like be thin, or, it's not even stop overeating. It's food freedom. It's like finding freedom with food. There's no judgment in there's no indication of what that looks like,
Well, and nor should there be, because there's no right size to be, and there's no right or wrong way to be with food. It's what works for you and what makes you feel the most free and vibrant and living your best life. That's what we're aiming for people. So the very notion of a diet is rule bound. It's rule bound. It's restrictive. It is looking for the answers outside of oneself. It's adhering to rules that are not from the internal.
And it seems to me that when you tell someone who's been struggling with some kind of food, overeating, whatever, some kind of relationship with food that isn't working for them.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. And we can throw labels around on it, right? But they're so focused on, I need to change this, I need to be different. And when you come in and say to them, you don't have to change anything, there's nothing wrong, you're okay, then they're like,
then, well, I can imagine you want to say that at the right point of the conversation. You don't want to say that, at the beginning. They'll perhaps storm out of your office, which would be understandable.
What? You're not going to help me?
Exactly. Are you telling me this is not a problem? Like, no, I get it. Like, I get it.
You know what, though? When I show up with you.
Problematic.
Yeah, when I show up with you, and let's say that I'm stuck in my, I've had anorexia all my life. Mm-hmm. And I've struggled with it, and I've been in and out of it, and I think I've got it, and no, I don't, and like I'm screwed up. And I read things about anorexia like, oh, it's very difficult to cure, and like you'll always have these ways of looking at yourself or whatever messages I've heard. And then I come to you, and even though you don't say it, you're with me. Your presence tells me there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay. You don't have to change anything. But you can, and you can. When you feel safe, you can. Like there's something in your presence, I think, is kind of what I'm getting, like in that good therapy environment where I feel safe, and your presence is telling me that. It's informing me, even though you haven't said the words. And then when the time is right, you can actually say that, and I can have that exhale.
Because there's a deep and innate wisdom that we all have within us. I think that's an embodied wisdom that we all have within us. We are pre-programmed for survival. We are pre-programmed to act in our best interests. And too much thinking undoes that, says the girl who thinks constantly.
Well, you know what? It's not. I have a similar affliction on occasion of the overthinking affliction. It's actually not the thinking that's the problem, because like we can't stop thinking. Like
it's the attaching.
Thinking, yes, it's like believing that it's true. Yeah. It's like making it real. Thoughts are thoughts are thoughts, and they're like, and some are really fun to play with. Like when we're playing with a lot of thinking right now, we're playing with thought, and we're playing with it in a way that's, like maybe helping us to see something new, or perhaps have a different experience of things, and to learn from each other. And that's really beautiful. It's like there are certain thoughts that are fun to play with, and others that it's just better to just ignore them. And, but when we take those ones seriously, like, I've got to get rid of that thought. Oh, it's so cool, or this is one that drives me nuts. And it was a long time before I saw this. It's like I have this limiting belief, like that's embedded in me, that I have to like rip out and get rid of it. It's like, so it's a thought. It's a thought. And thoughts are transient. They're transitory. They move. And if I don't make it heavy and real, this is easy to say and not so easy to embody around certain things. Certain things it's easy. Like we have ridiculous thoughts sometimes. We're like, that was a ridiculous thought, and it's gone, right? We don't do anything with it. But then there's that thought that keeps coming back, which might take the form of, I'm not good enough, or, whatever the thing is, right? But that thought's real, and it's embedded in it. I'm like, no. So it's going to be hard for me to hear that, but I might be able to hear, well, what if it wasn't real? What if you didn't have to do anything with it? What if you didn't have to get rid of it and you could just ignore it? What would it be like if you couldn't think that thought? And all of a sudden I'm like, well, I don't know. Good.
Well, it feels destabilizing in some way as well, I think so. I have this this metaphor that I use with clients often, actually. And it's this whole jumping off a cliff thing. often we're standing at the edge and we're looking down into a life that we want. There's this beautiful clear water. It's, it's the perfect temperature. It's everything that we could want. It's so inviting. And we just have to jump off the cliff to get it. We just have to jump off that cliff to make that decision to let go. But because we can't see the bottom of the ocean, we're like, oh, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't know. We might get to a point where we almost sort of jump off the cliff, but then we grab hold of something else. And, perhaps we even jump off that cliff, but then we grab onto a branch to hold us up, to prop us up, because it feels destabilizing when we don't have the things that we've always had that have felt comfortable.
What do we do when that happens? Like, how can we make this choice to move into this change that looks it's so inviting, but it's also so scary, because it feels like I'm leaving all the things that made me feel comfortable, all these things that I know.
I don't know that I can answer that, like for individual people. Like, how do we do that? I mean, I guess I'll just say we don't do it once for a start. It's a daily choice. So how do we do that? How do we do that continuously? How do we show up for that continuously? Is also a question. Can I do it once and then perhaps that's enough for today?
Yeah.
Maybe next week I'll do it twice.
Or, like, I think about for myself, sometimes, like, thinking about it like a leap off a cliff is really scary. What if in a moment I switch up the metaphor, just for the moment, because the leap off the cliff into something that's gorgeous and like diving off into this water, like it's actually really inviting, but it could also be scary because it's like a big leap. Like, how about I just put my toe in the water and take it back out? Like that's one way. There are probably a million ways to do this, but like, oh, what if I just try it? This is something that I've used to trick myself into things a lot, and sometimes I play around with this, like, what if we do an experiment? What if we just, like, for one day, we try not believing that thought? Or we just ponder, like, what if I didn't believe that thought? Or we just notice what happens around this particular thing. Or we're just going to not complain. I've been thinking about coming back to it. There's a 21-day no complaint challenge that, I forget the origins of the story. You can probably Google it. But the way that it works is that you do not complain about anything for 21 days, and you wear a band on your wrist to remind you. And if you complain, you have to switch to the other wrist and start over again.
And is that internal as well, or is it just you don't outwardly complain?
External is enough. Like the inward complaints, oh my goodness, like.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I think there are some.
I don't know how I would manage that if it was.
But I can stop myself from saying, and the awareness of how much I complain comes really quickly. Like, oh my God, I'm complaining all the time. Like, and not that it's a bad thing to complain, but what if I experiment with it? And there are stories of people who've gone through this. I think the original story was that it was a pastor of a church who did this challenge with his parish, and it completely changed their lives because it changed their focus. They became aware of where they were complaining and feeding into that and started redirecting it. And as a result, all these other changes happened. Like they started looking, like it changed the direction they were looking. And I was thinking about that because when it came to my mind, I don't know why, and I was like, oh geez, I complain a lot. Not everyone does, but I do, because I talk a lot during the day, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm complaining. How is this related to what we were saying? Because it feels like it's quite off topic, but there was something about it that triggered it. It's like experimenting, even just for a day, to notice one exercise that I was given in a coaching program I was taking some time ago was to just notice how many times I'm making up things about the future. I was like, all day long, everything. Like, oh, this conversation with Bianca, after this, I'm going to go get myself a glass of water. I'm making it all up. Everything is made up. And we think those thoughts about the future, so they feel so real. And then our bodies respond to them. And now we're freaking out. But it's made up. And when we notice that, it shifts something.
It brings me back in a way to, I guess, one of my original statements about looking for truth. And knowing fundamentally that there is none, like there is no truth, because we all hold within us a capacity for good and for bad. We all hold within us a capacity to do the right or the wrong thing. We all hold within us a capacity to go this way or that way, you know. There is no sense that I arrive at my final destination and I'm a completed person who now, you know, just sails off into the sunset. It's a constant showing up and a constant decision.
What can we find? And maybe this is a leading question, maybe, but what can we find maybe within ourselves that will allow us to live in a world where in some way there's no ultimate truth about what we are, or good and bad, or what we're supposed to do and what we're not? Like, what is it that gives us some sense of like an anchor or a core?
You know, I guess I'm drawn into, and I would very much identify, I suppose, with a bit of a nihilistic thinking that there really isn't much meaning or purpose to life, but it's the meaning that we make of life, you know, that has to reverberate. It has to be there, and we get to choose that. Each day we get to choose that, because fundamentally, you know, I'm not a religious person, you know, but I would identify as a spiritual person, and you know, I'm very much on board with a lot of different ideas, I suppose, but the truth of all of that is not even so important. It's about how can I show up today for it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very grounded in the present. I become concerned when I see a lot of messages out there, and I hear people talk about, you know, the importance of finding your purpose and knowing why I'm here and all of this. And I just want to pull my hair out and wring my hands. I'm like, please do not torture yourself over this. What would you like your purpose to be? What meaning would you like to give it? How about that? That's a good one. Pick it. You know, like,
because it's another way of trying to grab onto certainty. It's another way of, you know, trying to make certain a world that is uncertain. And it's so understandable, of course.
Yeah, if somebody tells me, it's kind of like, and I've had this experience personally, I can remember feeling this way many times, like, if you just tell me what to do, whoever that is, God, a teacher, a mentor, a coach, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And it isn't how it works. And I so want it to be sometimes. You know, I'm more comfortable with it knowing that it's not that way now, because, and this is just for me, what I'm learning to trust is that when I come back to that presence and that innate wisdom that you were talking about, it's there. In the present, not in my thinking, in the present, in my body, in this moment, I'll know. Like, that's how we're designed, not when we're off in our thinking, worrying about things or giving ourselves guilt trips, but that can be there for me. Maybe that's as close to a truth, which is not a universal, but it's like a moment by moment truth. It's something we can come back to. It's something I can find this truth in this moment now. And that's a truth. Like it's not a fixed one that stays the same, but it's something I can rely upon.
And I think we can, we can quickly attach ourselves even, we can attach ourselves to an idea of non-attachment as well. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is that you said that made me think that, but because I think when you said that, you spent a lot of your life, saying to whoever it is, just tell me what to do. For me, when you said that, I thought I spent a lot of my life doing the exact opposite of like of everything I've been told to do. Like I'm quite, I realize as I get older that I'm quite oppositional, by nature. Not in a way, I'm not trying to piss anybody off, but basically, if you tell me to go right, I'll go left, like because I want to make up my own mind. Mm-hmm. And I must not become too attached to that as well. This idea of being, just like I'm my own person, I'll decide. Oh, like don't become too attached to that either. Like this is a lesson for me that there's value in everything, really. There's value to be had, and if you become too dogmatic in any direction, then you're attached.
So what's the benefit of non-attachment? What does that do for us?
You can be open. If you're non-attached, you can be open to the present moment. And non-attached allows the people around you to be as well. I think I've certainly spent a lot of my life mistakenly not seeing that. That being attached to particular outcomes or desires or whatever it is has actually trapped the people around me.
Interesting. That's again your desire to have things be a different way is actually what's keeping you imprisoned. Your attachment to an outcome or yourself being a certain way is what's keeping you trapped in something and engaged with it, enmeshed with it. What's kind of funny about what you said is that, so I grew up thinking, having this identity as being the good girl rule follower, but as I've grown and gotten to know myself better, I'm actually quite a contrarian, and I'm always looking for the one place where, like, I'll agree with that, and then wait, but accept this, accept that, accept this one thing. So it's not exactly rebellious, but it's like compelled to look for the other side, to look for the exception in something. And I rejected that about myself because I'm like, no, that can't be who I am. I'm the good girl. I follow the rules. Just, so for me, it was this process of moving from just tell me what to do and I'll do it to, no, I actually want to discover my way of doing it, which doesn't, without rejecting everybody else's ways. But
exactly.
Like, and that's the other piece, right? Like what you're saying, like you could become attached to being that, no, I oppose you, Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And miss out on something that actually might have been very useful.
Yeah. So we're kind of coming up on the end of our time together. Is there anything else about good therapy or this conversation that you want to reflect on, or?
I think it feels complete as a conversation can be, as we are simultaneously engaged but disengaged, and simultaneously attached yet not attached.
Oh, this could be very trippy conversation, Bianca. Like I have certain friends that I spin off into these really conceptual conversations, like woo, kind of coming out of it, like wow, we're attached but not attached. We're engaged but not attached, and we're this. And we're... What is your what is your biggest insight or takeaway from this conversation?
I must say that it's hard to put into words because it's an embodied sense. Just of just the value of presence, really. That value of not pushing and fighting and trying to make things different, not needing to be right or needing to get it right or to be perfect, not needing things to be a certain way, just allowing yourself to be open to the present, because who knows? I don't know what you know. I don't know what you could share with me or teach me, and if I'm so pig-headed that I can't be open enough to see that, then, well, that's okay too, but I might actually lose something.
I think for me, I'm having the thing that resonates the most is the things you said about your desire for something, or to keep something, or to let go of something, or get rid of something is keeping you in prison. That keeps echoing with me. I'm like, oh my, like we must be willing to let go of the thing we desire in order to have the movement that allows it to be possible. You can just sit in that. Whoa, thank you for that. That's really gorgeous. So tell me, Bianca, where can we find you if we want to connect? Where shall we go?
I would love to connect with whoever has listened to this, whoever is listening to this, for whom any of this conversation has resonated and you just want to stay in touch. You can find me on all the socials, the usual ones. So my name is Bianca Skilbeck. My business is Freedom from Food. On Instagram, it's freedom.from.food. On Facebook, it's freedomfromfood.ed.recovery. I have a Facebook group as well, which is attached to that, called Freedom from Food. Eating Disorder Recovery Pays Aligned. I can't even remember. I changed the name of it recently. Wanted it to be descriptive. And my website is just freedomfromfood.com.au.
Cool. Which is the best place? Like, where are you most active on the socials if somebody wanted to just come by and like connect there?
Equally Facebook and Instagram, honestly. Yeah. I'm on both of those daily. In my group is a good place to be, because that's my sort of number one priority, I suppose, that if people reach out in that space, I'm certain that's my priority to be engaged there. But yeah, equally Facebook and Instagram.
Cool. So I definitely highly recommend that you connect with Bianca in these ways if you're feeling moved. Obviously, based on this conversation, she is, well, I really see her as, I see you as pioneering like new ways of thinking, in particular around your areas of interest and passions around therapy and food and our relationship with it. But in general, that's what you're doing, like exploring these areas and asking these questions that are unanswerable, which is one of my favorite pastimes. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And I'd add that, the relationship with food stuff, it's really just a metaphor. Food is a metaphor. Food is, it's how we are with food is how we are with ourselves. So it's sort of, it all goes beyond that. It's interesting. I actually, in my practice, the smallest part of what I talk about with people is food.
Yes.
Because we're looking for freedom from it. So we don't want to be attached to that. We don't want to be, bound to that in a way that feels so, so imprisoning.
Mm. And the way to have that freedom is through letting go of, like, being non-attachment to either the food or the not having of it, or the issue or the not having of the issue, having it or not.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to have me reeling for days, Bianca. I'm going to be like, I think I'm going to take this and like stick it somewhere so I can just think about it every day. And it's feeding something in me. I have no idea. We'll see. I'll have dreams tonight.
Okay, you let me know.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Bianca. Really, really enjoyed this conversation.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Hey, thanks for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wild Creation email from me filled with more inspiring stories, marketing experiments, playful questions, new podcast episodes, videos and freebies, and anything else I'm playing with, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/wild creation. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.